What started as just a simple tariff policy turned into a full-blown political war. United States versus Canada Trudeau, the clash no one saw coming. But here's the real question. Who actually won? And who secretly lost way more than they're admitting? Stick around because by the end of this video, you'll know the truth that the media won't tell you. The room was buzzing with energy. Reporters shuffled their papers, cameras flashed, and the tension in the air was undeniable. The world was watching, waiting, because when Donald Trump stepped up to a podium, something big was about to go down. Trump, standing tall in front of the White House press corps, adjusted his suit, leaned into the mic, and with his signature confidence, delivered the bombshell. We're making America strong again. These new tariffs, 25% on steel, 10% on aluminum, are a strategic move. No more unfair trade deals, no more free rides. America first, folks. The crowd erupted, not in applause, but in shock. This was huge. Within minutes, news headlines flashed across every major network. Trump slaps massive tariffs on Canada. Trade war brewing? U.S. strikes first? Trudeau calls Trump's move dumb in fiery response. Dumb. That was the word that ignited a firestorm. Just hours after Trump's announcement, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau took the stage in Ottawa. His usual diplomatic tone replaced by something rare: outright anger. "Let me be clear," Trudeau said, his voice firm, his eyes locked onto the cameras. "These tariffs are reckless, unnecessary, and frankly, dumb." A sharp inhale from the reporters. This wasn't Trudeau's usual style. He wasn't just responding, he was declaring war. The media exploded. Twitter went into meltdown mode. Political analysts scrambled to decode the implications. Would this spark a full-blown trade war? Would Canada retaliate? And most importantly, who would back down first? One thing was certain. This wasn't just politics anymore, it was a showdown. The moment Trudeau's dumb tariffs statement hit the airwaves, it was like throwing gasoline on an open flame. Within minutes, news networks, social media, and political analysts were in overdrive. CNN. Trudeau slams. Trump in fiery speech calls tariffs reckless. Fox News. Trump's bold move, a necessary step to protect America's economy. Twitter, a battlefield. Trade war and Trump vs. Trudeau trending worldwide. Instead of backing down, Trudeau doubled down. A special press conference was called in Ottawa. Cameras flashed as he stepped up, his tone sharper than before. "These tariffs hurt American workers as much as Canadians. We will not be bullied. We will respond accordingly." Boom. That was it. Canada was officially in fight mode. And then, just when Trudeau thought he had the upper hand, Trump fired back the only way he knew how: Twitter. It reeled Donald Trump. "Trudeau is weak. Canada has been taking advantage of the U.S. for years. No more free rides. My tariffs are just the beginning. America first." The internet exploded. Supporters cheered. "Tell him, Trump!" Critics raged. "Trade war? This is madness." Trump wasn't just defending his move, he was going on the attack. Every major network called in economic experts to break it down. Some warned, this could crash the markets. Others claimed, Trump is just leveling the playing field. But one thing was clear: this wasn't going away anytime soon. The world was officially watching a political showdown unlike anything seen in years. And with two world leaders refusing to back down, the question now was, who would strike next? The aftershocks of Trump's tariffs were no longer just political. They were now hitting Canada's economy. Downward trend. The first casualty? Canada's agriculture and energy sectors. Farmers watched in shock as exports to the U.S. plummeted overnight. Factories slowed production, and oil shipments faced unexpected blocks at the border. Panic set in. Jobs were now at stake. Trudeau had no choice but to retaliate. At a high-stakes press conference, his tone was no longer just frustration. It was cold, calculated, and firm. "We did not start this, but we will respond." Then the hammer dropped. Canada's counter tariffs, $20 billion in penalties targeting U.S. goods. Major industries hit: automobiles, dairy, and American steel. Message to Trump: we can play this game too. The retaliation was swift. Canadian businesses cheered. American manufacturers panicked. But before Trudeau could claim victory, Trump clapped back hard. You're real Donald Trump. Canada is panicking. More tariffs are coming. You thought that was bad? Just wait. And just like that, the trade war went from tension to full-blown economic warfare. Markets trembled, investors ran scared, and the world braced for impact. The world watched with bated breath. What had started as a political dispute had now spiraled into an all-out trade war, and neither leader was backing down. The Canadian economy was feeling the squeeze, but Trudeau refused to show weakness. Meanwhile, American manufacturers and investors were growing restless, fearing that Trump's aggressive stance was pushing both nations toward economic disaster. And then, Trudeau dropped the bombshell. Standing before a packed press conference in Ottawa, he looked straight into the cameras, his tone measured, yet sharp enough to cut through the noise. Let's be clear. America is hurting itself more than us. These tariffs don't just affect Canada, they're punishing American workers, American businesses, and the American consumer. His words landed like a thunderclap. For the first time, the narrative was shifting. As Trudeau's words circulated, the markets reacted instantly. The Dow Jones took a nosedive, investors scrambling as fears of a prolonged economic battle grew. American businesses, especially automakers, farmers, and steel manufacturers, were now in full panic mode. Industries in both countries were bleeding money, and CEOs were calling for an end to the madness. "We can't afford this trade war," screamed a headline on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Fox News ran a segment titled, "Trump's Tough Tariffs, Smart Strategy or Economic Suicide?" Even some of Trump's closest allies in the Republican Party started questioning the move. Behind closed doors, pressure was mounting. But would Trump back down? A real Donald Trump. Trudeau doesn't understand. We are winning. Canada needs us more than we need them. No backing down. Despite the Wall Street panic, the corporate backlash, and the economic tremors, Trump refused to blink. Instead, he threatened to go even further. More tariffs, tighter restrictions on Canadian imports, even talks of pulling out of trade agreements altogether. For Trump, this wasn't just about trade anymore. It was about power, dominance, and proving that no one, not even Canada, could challenge his America First vision. For Trudeau, this was about survival. Backing down meant admitting weakness, but continuing the fight meant risking economic collapse. Both leaders stood at a breaking point. The world watched, waiting for the next move. The trade war had gone from policy dispute to cultural battleground. It wasn't just about tariffs anymore. It was a war of ideologies, national pride, and global influence. And nowhere was this more visible than on social media. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram became digital war zones. U.S. Trump supporters were fired up. Finally, a president who puts America first. Trudeau is weak. We don't need Canada, they need us. Trump is playing chess while Trudeau is playing checkers. Canadians were furious. Trump is destroying years of friendship and trade. This will hurt American workers more than us. We don't take orders from Washington. Even some Americans sided with Canada, blaming Trump for playing economic chess with real people's lives. Farmers, automakers, and business owners pleaded for an end to the madness. Elon Musk tweeted, "Trade wars only make the people suffer. Leaders need to negotiate, not throw tantrums." Bernie Sanders called it a reckless move that will crush the working class. Fox News' Tucker Carlson praised Trump's stance. The U.S. has been ripped off for decades. This was long overdue. Late-night hosts mocked the situation, with Trevor Noah saying, "Trump just realized Canada exists and already started a fight with them." Even international leaders from Europe to Asia started commenting. This was no longer just a U.S.-Canada issue. It had become a global spectacle. Behind the scenes, both Trump and Trudeau faced intense pressure. Big corporations in America started lobbying against Trump, warning of economic disaster. Canadian businesses demanded Trudeau make a deal before things got worse. Wall Street insiders feared an international financial crisis if the war dragged on. The question was no longer who was winning the war, but how much longer they could afford to fight it. As the world held its breath, one thing was clear. Someone would have to make the next move. The pressure was unbearable. Neither Trump nor Trudeau wanted to back down, but the weight of global backlash, economic panic, and political fallout had reached a breaking point. Backdoor meetings were held. Advisors, diplomats, and business leaders pushed for a solution. Markets were still shaky. Farmers were protesting. Automakers were warning of mass layoffs. Even some of Trump's top allies in Congress urged him to reconsider. Mr. President, this isn't just hurting Canada, it's hurting our own people. And Trudeau? His advisors warned that pushing too hard could permanently damage U.S.-Canada relations. Something had to give. In a high-stakes, closed-door meeting, U.S. and Canadian officials hammered out a deal, one that would let both leaders save face without looking weak. Trump agreed to reduce some tariffs on Canadian imports. Trudeau softened his counter-tariffs, allowing American goods to flow more freely again. Both sides claimed victory, but the scars of this battle would last. Finally, after weeks of economic warfare, the trade war was de-escalated. But was it truly over? Trump's supporters called it a win, saying, Trump stood up to unfair trade and got a better deal. America first still stands. Trudeau's supporters argued, Canada didn't bow down, we fought back and protected our economy. Trudeau showed real leadership against a global superpower. But economists had a different take. Both sides lost money. The real winners? The countries that stayed out of this mess. The trade war had ended, but the rivalry between Trump and Trudeau had only just begun. Would there be another economic showdown? Had Trump learned his lesson? Or was this just round one? Would Canada always be seen as a target in U.S. trade policy? One thing was certain. This was a fight the world would never forget. This wasn't just a trade war, it was a lesson in leadership, diplomacy, and the cost of political battles. Diplomacy matters. One wrong move can shake global economies and strain decades-long alliances. Economic decisions have real consequences. Both Americans and Canadians suffered as businesses took hits, jobs were lost, and markets trembled. Leadership is tested in crisis. Trump stood by his America First approach, while Trudeau fought to protect Canada's interests. But in the end, both had to compromise. Some say Trudeau stood his ground against a bully. Others say Trump did what any strong leader would, put his country first. But what do you think? Did Trudeau make the right move? Or was Trump just protecting American workers? Was this a necessary fight or an avoidable disaster? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love deep dives into political showdowns, trade wars, and viral debates, make sure to subscribe for more. Blast off!